hotel where you are sitting is one of the very rare green hotel. And stupidly they paint it brown, unfortunately, which I don't understand. So what are the sources of clean energy saving the earth? Nuclear, hydro, renewable, geothermal, wind, biopower, solar. Please listen, no particular source of energy can meet the demand as such. I don't, Professor Bose, where are you? Yeah. You see, I don't have any dispute about the fact that nuclear is not the only solution. Renewable is not the only solution. And I'm not here to propagandify, as it were. I know it. Geothermal is not the only solution. And just pankha ghurake, that means wind, is not the only solution. But you have to have, where there's a lot of wind, you have to have some pankha, but it's damned expensive. And in India, solar power still is extremely expensive because photovoltaic cell is extremely expensive. Energy options, obviously, nuclear at locations away from coal mines and near the lead centers. The Kyoto Protocol says that if you have a nuclear power station near the coal mine, which produces this carbon dioxide and monoxide, Kyoto Protocol says the world is responsible to giving you money. Yesterday here there was a discussion that Bengal doesn't want any nuclear power station in Haripur. And I, like others, particularly myself in Calcutta area, have been fighting for Haripur for a long time. And I must confess today, I have lost the battle. But the fact remains that if you have 4 nuclear power stations or 5 nuclear power stations, 1,000 megawatt each in Haripur area, then of course there will be employment for so many people. There will be school, there will be college or hospital. Poor fishermen would get an education. And fisherman's grandson doesn't have to be fisherman anymore. And we did this experiment in Mahabalipuram near Madras, where the Madras Atomic Power Plant 1, 2, now 3, 4. And the fishermen, from my experience in recently only, are extremely happy. This attitude that a farmer's son would be a farmer, his son would be a farmer, his son would be a farmer, is not a sign of progressive thinking in my mind. If India has to progress all together, all through, like a collective progress, not just a few people who are sort of rich and having in great companies and so on and so forth. That's not the philosophy of some of us. This is the different cost. As you can see, solar photovoltaic is very expensive. And the solar option is also there. I don't want to go into details now. This is the solar option, really. What will be ideal, in fact, is the following. If there is a United Nations type of organization where you can tap the energy from the Sahara Desert and distribute it very judiciously around the world, a lot of problems would be solved. If I understand, a company has been set up to do just that, at least to tap the solar power energy from Sahara. And I'm very sorry to tell you, that has gone bankrupt. This is a very sad thing. And even I know from various committees which I attend, unfortunately, that the solar power effort in our country is really not doing terribly well. I think eventually, probably, we may have to go back to what we in Bengal call ghute technology. What is ghute? You know ghute? The cow dung is there, you dry it up, and that produces some chilli. We're going backwards, as it were, in time. And therefore, eventually, when the industry would improve and we can't meet the demand, we have to go back to produce billions of cows, so that they produce millions and tons of dung, and then millions and billions of tons of ghute would be produced. This is a story of Archimedes destroying the fleet by so-called magnifying glass, although I haven't found any great evidence that it actually happened. This is the so-called thermal solar power. India's present energy mix. I have to be quick. I can see you are really starving. I can hear your tummy aching or squeezing. So I'll go through it very quickly. Thermal still remains 64%. Nuclear only 3%. Excuse me, sir, if you don't mind. If you don't mind, sir, if you want to laugh, have a hearty laugh outside, okay? And energy mix in 203132, natural gas, coal, hydro, this is the Indian scenario. Estimates of energy sources in India, 140 years at current level coal, 45 years to 50 years, 5% increase. Crude oil at current level 23 years, and gas is just about 30 years if business as usual goes on. Import rate of Indian fossil fuel is increasing rapidly, and so is coal. A lot of coal is of course full of ash, and therefore you have to import coal to meet the demand. That's expensive. And one of the reasons rupee, I'm not an economist by any means, besides I have no respect for economists because they're always inevitably wrong. So therefore, the cost it costs for fuel in terms of both fossil and coal is increasing very, very rapidly, causing a tremendous anxiety in P. Chidambaram said. So I'll talk briefly, as was mentioned, about the so-called nuclear issue of India, and this will be brief, and we are always having obstacles. So 20,000 megawatt by 2020 is the sort of target. An Indo-US deal was severely criticized in the Lok Sabha, and the goalposts of the deal went going from hither and thither. Australia at the beginning of the deal was not agreeing. Canada certainly did not agree because we used the Kandu reactor for plutonium for bomb in 1974. But now it is very much there, the nuclear supply group, and that in the simplest language is to provide enough uranium to run our workhorse called pressurized heavy water reactor. There is a nuclear renaissance more or less all over the world, except Germany. As I mentioned, the truth is Germany actually imports electricity mostly, I repeat, from France and Czechoslovakia. This is a little complicated nuclear fuel cycle dreamt up by the great man, visionary Homi Jehangir Bhabha, pressurized heavy water reactor, then now prototype fast breeder reactor, then fast breeder reactor, and so on. It's a bit complicated, but you will see the distribution of the reactors here. In South Africa and Cape Town, there is one reactor. India, curiously enough, all now centered around the Western India through to South India, but a big blank zero in Northeast, Bengal, Orissa. Not surprising, the economic standard of these particular states I just mentioned is nowhere comparable to Maharashtra, Gujarat, and even South India. There is a deep connection, it seems to me, between nuclear power stations and growth in economy. Not the only reason, but one of the driving reasons. France is 82.5%, and Germany is 31%, but is going down now. And it amazes me, having traveled those areas so many times, that France is a small country, and Germany is also a small country. France wants to have nuclear power, and Germany doesn't want any nuclear power at all. Now that's extraordinary. And that is, of course, because very simple, because of the greenhouse, not greenhouse effect, but the green movement in Germany. You lose out on votes if you have too much of nuclear power station. So, Chancellor, what he has done, of course, is to keep on increasing the amount of import from these two countries, as I just mentioned. This is the so-called nuclear belt. More are being built. Recently, we had a bout of Kudankulam problems, serious problem, and now it has been solved, and I'm very glad to tell you it has gone critical very recently. But the problems we face in terms of convincing the local population and India at large of installing nuclear power station is a very serious one. And I, along with my colleagues in the Department of Atomic Energy, must take the full blame. Because our public relation, our talking to people, we talk from the rostrum, not go down to their level to express the idea of why it is good for them. We command, but we don't demand. We should be the other way around. They should demand and we deliver. We should not behave like big babus sitting in Bombay and Delhi, but actually go to talk to the fishermen in Haripur. Actually go to Mahabalipuram to talk to fishermen in their own language to make them convinced that this is good for them. 8 units to 700 megawatt pressurized heavy water reactor and 4 1,000 megawatt light water reactor are sanctioned. India, as I say, expects 20,000 megawatt by 2020, but I think that is not very realistic because of the problems I just mentioned. But it's very nice, very easy to show that just nuclear power is not going to solve your problem. As it is written there, I don't have time to go into it, it's an absurd point that you have to make a 1 gigawatt reactor every other day, and that's totally unrealistic. This is the scenario of Indian nuclear program as envisaged by Homi Jehangir Bhabha. Stage 1 pressurized heavy water reactor, Stage 2 fast breeder reactor, 40 megawatt fast breeder reactor is already operational, and thorium-based reactors, 30 kilowatt Kamini is already operating. My friend from Bhabini, this company which runs this organization, was expected to come here, but he couldn't make it because he has a tremendous pressure on him actually. And Dr. Shonde, for some other reason, I talked to Prasad. He's a very nice man, but very sad to say, the people who are sitting in Madras, in Kalpakkam area, to them, Calcutta is about going to Mars, you know. I mean, it's not in their psyche somehow. I said, Baba, it's not such a bad thing. I mean, you are a fish eater, damn good fish you get in Calcutta. But somehow, I couldn't convince him. This is the famous Fukushima, infamous Fukushima nuclear disaster that shook the whole world. And please let me tell you, that's not because any reactor problem, but the company wanted to short circuit or, well, essentially cut corners to make quick profit. And that meant, in terms of the so-called checks and balances for safety was overlooked. And in that respect, everybody says, or thinks at least, that this country has nothing to offer. So they send their children to USA to prosper, and they go when they become old to USA. Well, that's fine, it's a free country. But the fact is, in the nuclear record, India is one of the best in the whole world, and the world recognizes that. Fukushima nuclear disaster immediately followed by Germany capping, worldwide controversy and debate, and land acquiring process, especially in Bengal, also become a political issue. So you do one thing, you keep the land to who the land belongs, and you have only chana, you know, for dinner. This is another thing that the world is participating, called the fusion reactors, called ITER, International Thermonuclear Reactor. This is absolutely safe so far as radiation is concerned, but extremely expensive. And the dream that we nurtured from the day we understood the nuclear fission, when I was in college, this is fusion, and this is still very far away. India is participating in this great adventure, and in fact 5 billion euro we have actually given in kind, not in cash, to this global adventure. It is going to be built in France. This is my favorite, geothermal energy. Mother Earth is giving you energy. Just dig. Don't just dig and produce oil, but dig and have power. Because inside Earth, the temperature goes up by hundreds and thousands of degrees. Well, my country has done nothing so far. United States, as usual, done a lot. Even Thailand, India is not in the list till the date. See, this is a call to all of you, such a very enlightened body of people, to really harp on geothermal. And it's so simple. You simply bore a hole and collect the heat, put in the water turbine, and electricity is produced. As simple as that. Running cost is very little. There is virtually no problem on environmental issues, and we are trying to do that in the Bokreshwar area, thermal spring near Shantiniketan, where there is a possibility of producing a prototype geothermal reactor unit. And just look at that. 1904, the first geothermal power plant came into operation in Italy. And just to remind you, it's 2013. I don't know who thinks what in New Delhi, actually. I just don't understand it. So many times one has mentioned about geothermal, "Are bhai chodo, hoga nahi." I mean, this is ridiculous, actually. It's so obvious, so obvious thing to do. And India has more than 300 hot springs, and the very modest conservative estimate is about 10,000 megawatt. The paradigm shift in our thinking as we go along. We can't only think for ourselves or individually if you want to survive. There should be a collective response, and there should be an element of global governance. Because I remember when the so-called Chernobyl accident took place, I was somewhere else in the world, and the whole world just got absolutely nervous because of the radioactive gas coming through. Now the opposite side, China's so-called plateau in 1997, exactly opposite to what I started my talk, and 2005. This is the green effect, not greenhouse. And they have done it beautifully, and it's very, very impressive in my opinion. Conclusion in Energy Challenge, and I would like you to just read it. I would like to say that the title says about political business now. From the Obama's rhetoric and the conferences in Copenhagen, Rio de Janeiro, where there was activistic talk and so-called activism in terms of the global temperature rise, environment, climate change, and so on. But over the years, it has gone underground. Nobody talks about it. As I mentioned in the beginning, Obama doesn't talk about it. So what do you do? In fact, I can see efficient, high-quality LED lights are already operational in India. And they're damn sight more efficient than these bulbs. I don't know what is LED. And there will be changeover in the actual use of cars. A new generation of affordable plug-in hybrids will be used. And new gadgets with popular simply because they're more useful, user-friendly, and cheaper would come out in the market. And this is something we are expecting as a sort of a revolution. And therefore, ultimately, to change our world for the better and not for the green campaigner or in the international conference of plenty potentialities and so on. The former activism has not been totally disappeared. It has only unveiled underground, out of sight. And therefore, in this context, before I end, the climate of climate change has gone through a tremendous shift in our understanding. So, I'll finish with my epilogue. It is my favorite. As you stand in the beginning of the 21st century, we see man relentlessly pursuing one single dominant goal or agenda, and that is prosperity, and prosperity sometimes at any cost. There has never been in human history one singular objective that has dominated so many, so much for so long. This has been possible by mindless industrialization and the unprecedented growth of the wrong kind of technology. We want more, and more is not enough because we want even more. In the process, we have managed to destroy the essential equilibrium of our ecology. As we stand in the beginning of the 21st century, we see man relentlessly and so on. Technology thus therefore owes an apology to the ecology. The final epitaph is, we have to live. Generation after generations after us have to live. And to live, they have to breathe. And you have to embark on a new paradigm for conserving the ecological balance, which you are damned hell to destroy. Man has gone through many revolutions in the history. The revolution that daunts us and stares at us just now is not a social or political revolution, as many people think, but a revolution of our basic perception of how we should live, and a revolution in our perception of the future and beyond, a revolution to usher in a quantum shift of our mindset. This is, I hope, only the beginning. If you don't do that, the great, incredible painter of 1562, it will be sheer death of the world. In short, it will go back to either a very cold world or a very hot world where you can't live as we live today. But I finish ultimately with a quotation from Mahatma Gandhi, which is very nice, very attractive to me. The earth, the air, the land, and the water are not an inheritance from our forefathers, but a loan from our children. So you have to hand over to them at least as it was handed over to us. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's right here.
No question? Yeah, I will take one question which can attack me. Sure. Oh, not physically. No.
Rabindranath Tagore. Can you believe it? That it is to be come back again. Because the nuclear power as well as all the challenges are giving us
By the way, for your
stress.
kind information, sir, I'm a great admirer of Rabindranath Tagore. But I am not the kind of Bengali who would bring Rabindranath Tagore dale, jhole, ombole.
That was a nice, great note to end. Thank you, sir.
No, no.
Thank you. So we end on a very light note and on a very high note as well. Correct? Thank you, sir.
Yes, your pen right. Children every year. We are around 500 students participated this year and we are felicitating 80 of them. You are requested to please be here. Your presence is important for the encouragement to the kids. May we request Mr. Devi Mukherjee to please present a memento from our side to Dr. Sinha. May I now request Mr. Arun Kumar Mukherjee to please present a memento to Mr. Devi Mukherjee. Competition every year we organize. The topic is on environment. The objective of the chamber is to develop environment consciousness among school kids. May we have Mr. P. Roy, Director General of the Bengal Chamber? May we have Mr. Shutanu Ghosh, Co-Chairperson of Energy Environment Committee of the Chamber? Here we have Mr. Devi Mukherjee. And Mr. Arun Kumar Mukherjee, may we also have you on the stage?
Today we are handing over the Certificate of Excellence to all the kids, rather to the 80 selected kids who participated in our annual sit and draw competition. We congratulate each and every kid and their parents for their success. We would now like to invite Roshni Chaurasia of Yule Center for Adult Learning to please come up to the dais to receive her Certificate of Excellence. Roshni Chaurasia. May I now request my friends from the chamber to invite Ms. Mrinalini Ghosh, Ms. Aditya Mondol and Kushal Shamadar to be on the dais. Mrinalini Ghosh from Modern High School, Aditya Mondol from St. Sebastian School and Kushal Shamadar from MHMS School. I think Kushal is not here among us. এটা হয়ে গেলে শুরু করবে কারণ বাচ্চারা থাক দাঁড়া হ্যাঁ Now we will call her for Loreto Day School, Abhipsha Dash, Oshmita Pal Chaudhary, Shreyushi Maiti. I would request the volunteers of Bengal Chamber to please take the kids who have already received the awards. Abhipsha Dash, Oshmita Pal Chaudhary, Shreyushi Maiti.
Check, hello. Check, hello.
Neelam Patro. Neelam. Tatari issue, please. Papai Dash. Papai Dash. Priyanka Bishash. Priyanka Bishash. Shantanu Haldar. Shantanu Haldar. Srishti Jaiswal. Srishti Jaiswal. Shumit Shah. Shumit Shah. Vijal Thakur. Shonali Haldar. Shonali Haldar. ওকে দিয়ে দাও সোনালী হালদার কি বলছে আরতি প্রসাদ অপর্ণা মণ্ডল দীপালি হালদার শিখা হালদার দীপালি হালদার কাকে দিয়ে দেবো এই ছেলেটিকে আচ্ছা শিখা হালদার আঁচল জয়